Welcome back to the Exploring Growth podcast. Here's the question we're trying to answer on this episode. Can you build or grow a B2B company without social media? It's a good one. All right, welcome back. Today we have Joe Sullivan, co-owner of Gorilla 76. And Mary Keogh actually introduced us. And at the time, Mary was there working with Gorilla 76 and had a great conversation and thought this would be a good time to bring one of the co-owners on. And I thought it was really interesting because, I own Signal Media. It's a content agency helping all kinds of different companies create video that they can use in their content strategy and some podcasting as well. And then on your side, you're working specifically with manufacturers. And then that's kind of your niche, to help them build a good content strategy and deploy that strategy. So as we were kind of talking through, what's the singular kind of thread? I've been working on this thought came to mind. I think I even posted on LinkedIn a few days ago that I'm curious to get your sort of knee-jerk reaction to. So I haven't prepped Joe at all. So we'll see what his response is. I'm curious if you think that can you grow a company B2B without social media? So essentially, let's say you start from scratch. You don't have any social. That's an easier one. You say just don't start them. Or you currently have some social media, and we could talk specifically, maybe even geared towards manufacturing too, if you want to, because I know that's really heavily your wheelhouse. But let's say you were to just get rid of all social media. I'm not talking about YouTube. I'm talking more social platforms. Mm-hmm. Can you still grow a company today without social media is the question. Curious your thoughts.
That's a great question. I was trying to think as you were, setting me up here. Where's this going to go? What question am I about to get? And I've never been asked that question, so I don't have a canned answer for it. But as I kind of think on the fly here, can you? Yeah, I'm not the type that's going to sit here and talk about whatever is dead or you can't do this if you don't have this thing. But I do think that we're at a point now where it would be very, very challenging. I think like when I think about what really matters in marketing or, fundamental marketing strategy, it kind of comes down to this. Who are you targeting? And who is your audience? Who are the individual human beings or job roles that you need to reach? What matters to those people? Like, what are they trying to achieve? What problems are they trying to solve? What outcome they're trying to get to? How can you align your expertise with that and package up, resources and insights and content or whatever you want to call it. But then it comes down to how do we make sure those insights and that messaging is consumed? And I think without social media, I think you're taking away probably for most of you the best and most efficient distribution channel or place to go target and reach those right people at scale, to engage with them, start conversations, to try to get input on what message is resonating and what's not. So I think, I have some thoughts on where would I go if social media disappeared today? How would I start doing it? Yeah. But I do think it's possible, but I think you're especially, I guess if the question is, if it went away, what would you do? Well, then we're all in the same boat. If you just said, no, it's not important, we're not going to do it. Well, then I think you're putting yourself at a massive disadvantage.
Yeah. And I think another way to come at it would be what is the real impact of social media for a B2B company, right? Mm-hmm. And is that impact great enough to spend all the time, resources, manpower behind it that could be spent somewhere else? That is even more fundamental, because I think you laid it out perfectly, how we should think about, fundamentally how we should go about marketing a company. But in the process of doing that, again, speaking straight to the B2B, I think B2C, it's a completely different question. But B2B, we can buy a list. We know who is sitting in which seat. If we already have, let's say, we're already pretty far down. Let's say your company's been around for a little while. You've done the homework. You're kind of already down the road a little bit to know kind of what those pain points are, what the desires are, what their days look like. You've built your personas out and everything, and you've had some success using the fundamentals. Then why would we need to use social media? I guess where's that impact really coming from? I'll give you another chance to kind of go at it, and I'll kind of give some of my thoughts.
Yeah, for sure. So, I think about maybe more traditional channels of, dispersing your message or reaching people. You think about live events. Trade shows are huge in manufacturing. Everybody goes
Mm-hmm.
to trade shows. Um, there's email, right? Like 10 years ago, I'd probably have been, and not probably, I was advising and helping clients, build lists, whether it was buying lists, whether it was, Zoom info type of stuff, or if it was, just the organic lists you've built through with your company, and sending information that way. I think some of the problems today is that the buying process has changed so much. You don't know who is
Mm-hmm.
actually in market for a product or service these days. You think
Yeah.
about sending email. You are, even if you're amazing at email, we actually do really well with our email for Gorilla. It only hits 5,000-6,000 people, but every other week, and it performs well. But it's every other week, and that's about the most you can do. Only some small percentage is actually paying attention and engaging, and you're competing with all the other companies that are just spamming constantly with email. So I think email
Right.
has its limitations. I think if done right, it can be really good. I mean, live events, I have seen manufacturers put their entire marketing budget into 3 days at IMTS or FabTech or Pack Expo or some of these huge shows, and they
Yeah.
spend 200K and ship all this equipment across the country, and that's it. Like,
Yep.
and you look at social, and you have a 24/7 platform to
Mm-hmm.
target who you want to build actual human connections with people, and it's a lot of work organically, but there's a paid side of it too. And I think we should at some point differentiate between
Sure.
organic and paid, because you can pay for access to your audience, and
Mm-hmm.
if you are delivering meaningful messaging and content, you can win that way very quickly, right?
Sure. All well said. And I personally think that it just comes down to how you use the tools. If you can win on trade shows alone, then that kind of proves my point. You don't need social media because you've utilized that tool to its fullest, fully optimized, fully integrated, whatever it may be. And again, it depends on the trajectory of how you want to grow your company. If you want this massive company, then ultimately you're going to need all the tools. But smaller companies, depending on what their end game is, may not. They just may have to do some things really well. But on the social side, I think if you were to deploy those tools, if you utilize them properly, and I'm even thinking efficiently, then you would need them less. And I guess I'm trying to make this point because when a lot of CEOs of these mid-market companies think about social media, they think about their personal feeds. They're not in, maybe the marketing leaders don't think about it this way as much, but I think the C-suite leaders, they think about social as just how they use it. Well, how could we reach our customer, especially in manufacturing? What are we going to do? TikTok dances? Like, I don't see how this connects, right? And so I think the point to make from this conversation, at least from my side, is paid, of course, is a completely different animal than organic, but it doesn't necessarily have to be utilized as a tool just for lead generation or just performance or just bottom of the funnel. I think you can utilize social all the way up the funnel. In fact, you can probably utilize it more strategically up the funnel than the bottom of the funnel. If you're
100%.
doing really well at trade shows, then and you fully optimize that and you feel like that spend there's a return, which in manufacturing a lot of times there is, then how do you support that effort from year to year or show to show by utilizing a more up, top middle of the funnel, utilizing social and email to support that. So you're even more fully optimizing the time that you're at a show. For me, I think that there are companies out there, albeit most of them smaller in size, that have gone for decades, generations of families have owned these companies and done really well, made lots of money, and they never had a Facebook page. They never had any social media. They still don't. So I think it's totally possible. I think that us as marketers, we get in this world of, I guess that was I'm on a little bit of a rant here, sorry, but that was my message to CEOs. But I think my message to marketers is, don't think that just because we deal with these tools every single day, that your customer, your client, necessarily needs to use it the way you think it needs to be used. You know, it's not, you're not a hammer and it's a nail. Like it's that's not how we should approach social media. It needs to be utilized first and foremost strategically, to be set as a tool to serve the strategy. I mean, I'm very much a strategist, so I'm kind of, playing to my skill, but that's the way I look at it. I think that companies come at social media so wrong, and they can get caught up using agencies to not really move the needle. And agencies, I think, have a lot of time have a hard time justifying the spend that's being made with them by the client, because they're using the tool the wrong way.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my 2 cents.
I completely agree. I think the way we look at it when we're using social for our clients is, it's your place to target and reach as much of your total addressable market as possible, and we're going to be really dialed in, and whether doing it organically or with paid budget.
Mm-hmm.
You want to use that as your brand marketing platform, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
your job is to, if you understand the people you need to reach and what those people care about, it's your job to figure out, how do we package up our expertise, address all those things, and be consistently publishing information around that matters to those people, and really expecting nothing in return in the short term. Like your job
That's
is
right.
not to blast sales messaging out there. This is not direct response advertising, like you're selling some widget off the shelf. I mean, I have one of our clients that's having the most success in on LinkedIn right now, sells $800,000 equipment to engineers and plant managers with 1.5 year long sales cycles.
Mm-hmm.
And they're winning on social, like paid social. Paid LinkedIn is one of their strongest platforms with the highest ROI. But that's because they go in there with content that is driven by their engineers, for
Mm-hmm.
engineers and plant managers. It's deep expertise content. We're targeting those specific people and nobody else, in the geographies and types of companies and even specific companies that they want to
Yeah.
reach. And it's the consumption of that content over time, little piece after little piece, that builds awareness and trust. And as those people all of a sudden have a need, they need to make a change, they have a facility expansion, they're not happy with their current piece of equipment, bit by bit they enter a buy cycle. And our clients, the first one they think of, because they're in front of them all the time,
Mm-hmm.
educating and teaching, right?
That is such a great example of what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. I think that is a very dialed in example of how to use social tools properly. I mean, and so to the point where you actually have the subject matter experts speaking to other subject matter experts directly as you can.
Mm-hmm.
The value there is immense.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
Yeah, you can't really fake that. And
Yeah,
it's a slower play, and that's why most companies won't do this, is because
that's
this
right.
particular client, they understand that, like, they weren't gonna see an ROI in 6 months. Their sales cycle's 12 to 18 months, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
they're, of course they're not gonna see an ROI, but what you want to do is be able to do this in a way where you're looking for signals. Is the message that we're
Mm-hmm.
putting out there reaching the right people? Is the message resonating? So we're looking for signals, like, if we're running video content, are people dropping off after 10 seconds, or are they watching a 2-minute video at
Mm-hmm.
least 75% of the way through? And are those the right people? Then
Yeah.
you're looking for signals like, are they following links back to our website? What are they doing when they get there? Are we generating actual quote requests from
Mm-hmm.
those and tracing it all the way to revenue? So, but that, for a company like that with a year plus sales cycle, you have to be content with the early signals to show
Mm-hmm.
you if you're on the right path before you're ever measuring ROI.
So to companies, leaders who are listening to this right now, if you're utilizing a content strategy to any degree and you have an agency involved that's giving you direction, and they're maybe even creating some content for you, deploying that content for you, if they're not speaking in this way, if they're not talking about SMEs talking to SMEs, dialing in on your target audience messaging, making things resonate with the length of your video, the type of what the actual content that's in your video, but then all the other things that go along with it, like length and style and tone. If they're not speaking to what content you should create at this level and what it is doing or what it should do, then you need to kind of rethink who you're working with. You'd be looking for an agency that's going to be thinking about it at this level. So let's switch gears here for a minute, just to kind of to change it up a little bit. I'm curious, since you're in manufacturing and you work with companies that are already at trade shows or going to continue to go to trade shows. What have you seen that's worked really well? Speaking to this point of like utilizing social tools strategically or in an important way. What have you seen that's worked really well to merge the two, right? So if you're going to a trade show, your client's going to a trade show, how can you use social, be it LinkedIn or Facebook even, or even some of the newer platforms? Like, how would you utilize them in a strategy to support what's already working at the trade show? Have you done that before?
Yeah. So, if you think about it, what's the biggest value in going to a trade show? It's in a concentrated area for a short period of time. You have a lot of your audience right there.
That's
a
right.
chance to meet actual human beings in person. If you've got a booth set up, I'm not a huge advocate of big fancy booths and spending all your money there, but like,
agreed,
I'm a big advocate of being there and
right.
and looking for ways to have conversations and things. But like some of the things that I've seen that I think are the smartest things companies out there are doing right now. One client of ours, for example, they manufacture cutting tools like for CNC machines, like,
okay,
in layman's terms, like drill bits, but for
yeah,
chiseling away at blocks of metal or whatever, right? And
right.
so they something they've done, I've seen other companies do too, is they'll bring a videographer to the show with them. And like their customers are there, their prospects are there. They'll just do interviews with them, and they'll like, if it's customers, they'll have them tell a success story right there on camera, as opposed to having to fly to that person's like office or facility and do, like, they've got 10 of their customers there.
That's right.
And they've got prospects there who they can meet and kind of do what you and me are doing right now, right? Where you and I didn't know each other before this, but you're interviewing me, you're gathering insights from me. Do the same with your audience.
We're talking shop.
Yeah, you talk shop. You learn what's going on in the world. What trends are you seeing in the space? What's some problems you've been struggling with or solving, and all of that stuff. I think it's the idea of going to these trade shows with the mindset that we're going to leave here not with 30 business cards of people we can cold call, but having built relationships by simultaneously making content with these people.
That's right.
You're a Orlando area guy. I don't know if you know, like, Sweetfish Media and James Carberry down there in Orlando. Yeah. So James and his team, they produced my show, The Manufacturing Executive, for the first few years I was running it. And James's book, Content-Based Networking, was really influential to me, where it's all about how do you meet the people you want to meet and build relationships with the people you want to know by making content with them. And making content may sound intimidating, but it can just be having conversations with them about what matters, right? And what better place than a trade show to do that. So I watch some people do that really well in the manufacturing space. There's a couple guys like Chris Lukey, he runs Manufacturing Happy Hour. Jake Hall, he's got 200,000 LinkedIn followers, and he's like,
that's cool,
the manufacturing millennial. And they're always there setting up shop. They've got a table branded. They're interviewing people like crazy, making content, and that's the type of stuff that manufacturers should be doing. Look at it not as a place to collect business cards, but build real relationships and make content with your audience.
Yes, 100%. And because you can then distribute that content
all year long,
whatever way you want to distribute it.
Yeah.
And if you think ahead, which you may not think ahead first, but then you get feedback and you're able to think ahead next, you come to those conversations with good, solid questions you want to get answered because you're already thinking about distribution.
Exactly. Yeah. Another guy I'll mention here is Justin Simon. I don't know if he'd be a great guy for you to have on your show, but he's got a podcast called Distribution First, and
Yeah,
he thinks about his distribution strategy for his content before he makes the content,
I like that.
because it's I had him on my show recently, and he talked about all about how the companies who do get to the point of making good content often will make so much that it never all gets used. So
Right.
where are you going to deliver the content,
That's right.
and then think about what things we need to make to to
It's
distribute there.
similar to
So yeah.
hiring a social media agency to help you with social media. You're hiring a production company to help you create videos for
Hmm.
what? I mean,
Yeah.
you have a bunch of videos now. That's great, and they look nice, but
Yep.
they're not going to help you at all.
Yeah.
I think you can get too dialed in too, and that all you have are these very, minutia driven high level or high level SME conversations, which don't benefit the greater. So you have to have a balance.
Hmm.
I like this idea of like going to trade shows or conferences, finding who's going to be on stage and bringing them on a podcast or a show or a blog or whatever pre-conference, and then following up with them post. After everything has happened, to get it's almost like your Monday Night Football. You know,
Yeah.
I,
The
I think
debrief, like,
yeah, I think those
yeah.
kind of things can be amazing because the organic kind of genuine conversations that you have, because there's an end game for what you're doing, but you're going to kind of let it play itself out,
Hmm.
is it's all kind of built in. You can go back and chop it up and distribute it, but then you've made all those connections,
Yeah.
and it cost you almost $0 if you already have the machine running. You didn't have to pay for sponsorships. You didn't have to have all the breakout sessions. You didn't have to do any of that. But you're now, you can interview the executive director of the show, like the actual trade show. I mean, you're now in the circle of people who are paying big dollars to be in that circle,
Yep.
um, sort of de facto.
Yeah, and a few other little things I'd add there that I think to build on it. Um, you turn a 3-day event into something that becomes evergreen, right? The
Mm-hmm.
content you produce there, a lot of it can get reused and reused and
That's right.
distributed in different channels. All these companies that put all their eggs in, well, I guess we're going to go to IMTS this year, and we're going to
Yeah.
ship this piece of equipment the size of my house across the country to
Yeah.
get it to Chicago. You now have something you can take and repurpose after that. And then I think there's also something to be said for the cross pollination of audiences when you're interviewing someone. Like, just use this as an example, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're interviewing me for your podcast,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm going to get these clips from you and I'm going to distribute them on my platform. And
Mm-hmm.
now, like, and so if you think about interviewing 25 prospects or customers at a trade show,
Yeah.
and they'll share the content too.
Yeah.
And if some of those companies are $billion companies that have massive followings,
That's it.
so all of this stuff works together. It's such a no-brainer to me, but
Once
it's not.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think once people get their mind around it,
Yeah.
it starts to become like, how have we not always done this?
Yeah, it's audience access is what it comes down to. Is like,
Right.
how can we build lanes into reaching people
Mm-hmm.
more easily that we need to reach with the right message? And a lot of
That's
that
right.
can happen through building relationships and making content with people.
That's it. That's it.
Hmm.
I love the idea of creating a show or creating some kind of, a consistent workplace where you show up, that you
Hmm.
can bring people into and talk with them at length about this sort of third. It's almost like I relate it to like that sociological thing that they did, study did, where you have your home, your work, and the third party is Starbucks, right? That third location that people have to go to.
Hmm.
I look at that as, I think they're calling it media brand now, like this brand that you're building, the show, this place where people can come and interact, that there's no sales happening and there's no marketing really happening. It's just people talking shop, but you're documenting it. I think that's the place where more companies need to lean into as we move forward.
I agree. I mean, I'll give you an example of what we're doing on that front. Like, we've built something called Industrial Marketing Live. It's every other week. This is a live event. We've had over 300 registrants now. Usually 50 to 60 show up. There was one this morning. I didn't get to attend, but I would imagine we probably drew 50 or so.
Mm.
We bring on guests, people from outside, our company. We do some teaching ourselves, but it's all people with marketing in their job title from manufacturing companies. and it's all cameras on. There's, imagine 50 faces up, and there's
Yeah.
a topic, and we're talking about it. We're doing a little teaching. People are coming on stage. And then we have a Slack community running parallel to that that's super active. People are talking all week long. You've got marketers from inside this company and this one, like bouncing ideas off each other. And we're just sort of facilitating.
Yeah.
But that sort of thing is, I mean, imagine that sort of thing for engineers inside of a specific niche, or for people, software developers. Like, these things are going on out there, but you can be the one to facilitate these things. And we
Yes.
don't go in there and sell anything, but those are some of our best channels for new business, because it just
Yeah.
happens naturally.
You're the facilitator, you're the host, so they look to you as
Yeah,
the expert,
of
which
course.
in case you are, because you're the one that has to know a lot about what you're doing to put this together.
Sure.
And then how you distribute that content widely after matters, and the relationships you're building within it and how you connect with them after matters, how they connect with you and how smaller groups form. You're really bringing it back to just being a good human person to other good humans, right? Because you love what you do, they find a value in what you do. You're doing it relatively for free, but it benefits all parties.
Mm-hmm. It's kind
I
of
love it.
ironic. I wrote about this recently in one of my newsletters, but like, the harder you push sales messaging
Mm-hmm.
inside the marketing platform, the less you sell. Like, that's
Yep.
just kind of the world we're in right now, and people don't get that. They're like, well, I can't do this long-term play where we're facilitating a community and we're hosting a podcast, or we're like writing content and publishing it weekly, or whatever the medium might be, because like we need sales, right? And here people are just on this hamster wheel, like delivering bottom of funnel sales messaging and talking about features and benefits, and in the background somebody else is just delivering value
Mm-hmm.
constantly. And who do you think is winning long term? Like, it's
Yeah.
not the guy who you're marking as spam in your inbox, and whose calls you're screening because you don't want to hear from them anymore. So
If I were sitting in a conversation like that, immediately I'm gonna have a red flag,
mm-hmm.
and the red flag is going to go to culture. Because if a leader's saying that we can't do this, this is not something we want to do,
Mm-hmm.
then immediately I'm thinking, okay, this is not the only place that you're thinking this. There's other parts of your company that you're being held back.
Yeah.
If you're not wanting to expand your thinking about marketing and sales, and just be open to maybe you could actually do some things different and it result in you doing a net less, marketing or less selling than you're currently doing. That to me, that's a leadership culture issue, and I would almost probably immediately walk away, because you can't change that. I've tried; it doesn't work. Um, but to me, I think there are some, like, if you're talking to the right person, again, CEO to agency, you're talking to the right agency that's knows what they're doing, and you're maybe there's some trepidation about going down this path. Well, let's address those concerns. What are the concerns? Is it budget? Is it time? Is it capacity from your team? Are there people on your team that that want to step up and do this, that just haven't been asked, or they haven't been put in the right place? Maybe there is an SME, maybe there's a salesperson. I mean, I know people from that are sales leaders that are really more marketers than they are salespeople, because they found their place in demand gen type of content, and branding, and so they do a lot more than their actual marketing counterpart in their company. Funny enough, and they probably end up selling more too. So I think you're right. I think it's an interesting conversation to have with a company. If they're gonna not be open to that idea, then probably the company's going to start to die, if it hasn't already started from within. I know it sounds kind of bleak, but that's kind of what it is.
There's truth to it. Yep.
Well, hey, this has been fun. We're kind of right up on that 30-minute mark that I'm shooting for. So I appreciate you jumping on here and talking about this. We'll stay connected, and I know there will be a chance in the future for us to get back together and chat about some other, topics that may be congruent in our world. So we'll stay in touch. But yeah, thanks for this time.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I love talking about this stuff. So it's fun to be, as a podcast host. It's fun to be on the other end of the mic sometimes,
Yeah.
and people asking me questions. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah. I said to someone else recently that was on, they said the same thing. I was like, yeah, I think being a podcast guest is like being in the passenger seat of the car. It's a whole different experience.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So,
Absolutely. Cool.
so I'm going to link your LinkedIn in the show notes. Is there anything else? I mean, we can put obviously gorilla76.com. Is that right?
Yep, you got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. And yeah, Joe
All right.
Sullivan, Gorilla 77, one of probably 10,000 Joe Sullivans on LinkedIn. So put in my company name and you'll find
Yeah.
me. But that's the best place to connect. So.
All right, cool. And you have a marketing podcast, a manufacturing podcast?
It's a manufacturing podcast. Yeah.
Okay.
I interview various manufacturing leaders and people who are influential to CEOs and presidents, and probably one out every top 10 topics is marketing or sales related. But I try to really have kind of bring in guests with a variety of things that matter to manufacturing leaders. So, but yeah, it's called The Manufacturing Executive. And yeah,
Okay.
next week, episode 150 goes live. That's 150 consecutive weeks. So I'm proud of that
awesome.
one.
Congrats on that.
Yeah,
That's not easy.
Good milestone. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Cool.
Great. Glad to have you.
All right.
And we'll be talking to you soon. Hey, thanks again for tuning in. I hope you're getting value out of this. If you didn't know, we have an email newsletter that follows this podcast, Exploring Growth newsletter. If you go to harvardmurray.com and you click on podcast at the top, you'll see a little submission box there about a quarter of the way down. You can sign up for the email. Every week, I literally sit down and write my thoughts of what's going through my head at the moment, things that I'm dealing with clients, concepts that I'm learning or deployed that have worked. I talk about everything that marketing, sales, customer success, everything in between. So if that's something that you're interested in reading or subscribing to, definitely go there and check that out.